When you sign up for a martial arts competition, whether it be wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, there's an agreement that you're both coming in normal. You're not juiced up. You're not going to cheat. You're going to have a fair fight, and we're going to see who's the better man. But every once in a while, you get some people who are just dirty fighters, whether they're eye poking, whether they're biting the ears, whether they're taking steroids, you know, guys who just don't want to follow the rules. And sometimes those end in tragedy, you know, and this is one of those stories. Billy Collins Jr., 14-0 boxer, young prospect, 22 years old, potentially a future champion up to this point. He fights a guy named Luis Rusto, and and his trainer, Panama Jack, you know, and it ends in a tragic way for Billy.
And the decision was unanimous in favor of Luis Rusto, but shortly after the fight, Collins' handlers charged that Rusto's gloves had been tampered with, that some of the required padding had been secretly and illegally removed, adding extra impact to Rusto's punches. The New York State Athletic Commission apparently was suspicious, and they impounded Luis Rusto's gloves.
As the rounds went on, Billy Collins was getting hit with big shots and getting damaged more than he's ever been hit before, more than he's ever been damaged before, you know. And by the end of the fight, both of his eyes were swollen shut, and he just took incredible damage. You know, Luis Rusto was so trash of a boxer that even with cheating and taking the padding out of the gloves, he still wasn't able to knock out Billy Collins. Billy Collins was such a dog. He was such a beast that going into the fight, he knew as the rounds went on, he knew something was off, you know, because this dude's hitting like crazy. You know, he's hitting crazy hard. He's hitting like a sledgehammer, and he's just getting hit with these shots over and over and over again. But Billy had so much heart. He was just in there taking the beating, and he never gave up, never threw in the towel, you know, and he ended up losing a decision. And that's the thing about boxing. You know, so many people say to me all the time, oh, MMA is how is MMA safer than boxing? So Billy in this fight, over all the rounds that they fought, he went to the decision. He's just getting bludgeoned repeatedly, round after round, big shots, you know, to the point where he took so much damage that he's never going to be the same. You know, in MMA, you get hit, boom, you go down, you get ground and pound, it's over with. And it's shorter rounds. You know, Billy took so much damage in this fight that both of his eyes were shut. He almost lost his eyes by the end of the fight. He almost lost his eyes. The doctors were able to save him, but he was never able to fight again, you know? And think about the mindset of what that's like. You have a fight with the guy that you signed up for it to be an even fight, a fair fight, you know, and you go in there, this guy takes the padding out of his gloves, making it harder for him to punch. But you're such a good boxer, you're so skilled, you're such a warrior that he couldn't knock you out. But you took so much damage that you're never going to be the same, you know. And when it comes to CTE, we've seen it with Aaron Hernandez. We've seen it with multiple different fighters throughout the years. That brain damage comes with a lot, you know, and that loss, between the loss of the fight and the physical damage that occurred to Billy, and also the loss of his career, all these things had a major effect on Billy. That basically, he was never going to be the same. You know, think about, like, if you work for something your entire life, it's your whole life. You work hard to become a doctor, right? You go to all the schooling, everything. You spend all the money in it. Your identity is attached to it. And now it gets, you can't be a doctor. You can't be a surgeon. You lose your hands. You can't be a surgeon anymore. There's going to be a big hole there. You know, it's going to be something very hard to come back from.
The New York State Boxing Commission conducted an independent investigation. Experts concluded that Panama Lewis intentionally removed a piece of protective padding from the glove of his fighter, Luis Resto, resulting in significantly harder punches from the Puerto Rican athlete. Holes were found in both gloves through which the protective padding had been removed. The result of the fight was changed to no contest. Lewis and Resto were permanently banned from boxing. However, this fact couldn't restore Billy Collins Jr.'s health.
It seemed like every time he hit me, I could feel knots come on my head, and my eyes already started to swell about the fourth, fifth round, and I just couldn't figure it out. And he made some good body shots, and I'd never been hit like that before in my life.
You have to be a real scumbag to go into a professional fight knowing that your opponent is going in there fair, or you're assuming that he's coming in there fair, and you take the padding out. And if he took the padding out, if they're willing to do that, I guarantee you he did more than that. He's probably on steroids, probably on drugs as well. If you're willing to do that, then why wouldn't you be willing to do other things? So now you're going into this fight stacking the deck. In a sport where people die. Every year in boxing, at least like 4 or 5 people die. This year alone in boxing, already 5 people have died, if not more. There's a few people in Africa who died, and Russia. So you're going into a sporting event where you know that you can die, and you're taking the padding out of your gloves. You're probably doing drugs, on steroids, doing whatever you can to get an advantage. I don't know how, as a man, you feel good knowing that you cheated. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you won the fight, but you know that you cheated. And when you come to the next level, you won't be able to beat the next guys because you don't have the skills. You don't have what it takes. So now you're going to have to keep doing. When you get to that next fight, it's going to be harder than the last fight. So you're going to have to cheat again, and you're going to have to hope that no one catches you. But the trainer and the fighter are both scumbags, super scumbags.
After the fight, he remained in a terrible condition.
The next day, when he got off the plane, his father was leading him. He was blind.
He had some sunglasses on, and he literally had to raise the skin around his eyes to take the sunglasses off.
The 21-year-old boxer was diagnosed with retinal detachment, resulting in a 70% loss of vision. Collins could no longer compete in the ring.
And just like that, your dreams are taken from you. At 22 years old, to be at that level of a boxer, that's your entire life. So there is no school, there is no nothing else. It's boxing. It's whatever your sport is. And now it's all taken from you because this guy wanted to cheat and he knew he couldn't beat you, and he was a coward, and he went in there and basically took your dreams from you, took your vision from you, and now what are you supposed to do? That's a tough spot to be in. That's a real rough spot to be in. And that's your profession. That's how you make your money. You know what I'm saying? So you have bills. You're depending on getting X amount of fights a year to be able to pay your bills, to be able to live your life and take care of your family. And now all of that's taken from you, and that's the thing about these sports is like you're all in, and to have it taken from you from a scumbag like that is just disgusting. From 2 guys. So now you get in a deep depression. You have the loss, you got the loss of your career, you got no money coming in. That's a hard place to be in. That's a stressful spot to be in. So things began to become worse and worse for Billy.
He became disabled, and then family problems, constant job changes, financial debts, alcohol issues, mood swings, frequent fainting, and mental disorders. On March 6, 1984, less than a year after the fateful fight against Resto, Billy Collins Jr. took his own life. The athlete's car crashed at high speed into a drainage pipe near his home in Antioch, Tennessee.
And, you know, we've seen this many times when it comes to brain trauma and things like this. It wasn't just the brain trauma. It's also, you know, you dedicate your whole life to a dream, to a sport. You're trying to become a world champion, and now it's taken from you. And, you know, at 22 years old, that's when these types of things usually happen. You know, when you're younger. If you make it to 25, it's usually it's a lot less frequent that people take their own lives and things like this. I've had many friends off themselves, and all of them were under the age of 25. You know, so it's unfortunate. You know, if Billy would have been able to sustain the onslaught that came his way, I'm sure he could have became a great boxing commentator, or you know, he could have done something different. But his life and his dream was taken from him from Luis Panama and Louis Rusto, you know, and because they just wanted to be cowards and they knew they couldn't beat him one-on-one in a fair fight, which that's what we sign up for when you go to compete. And there's been many stories in boxing and MMA of people cheating. That's why I have no tolerance for cheaters in combat sports. It's a sport where everything is on the line. Everything's on the line. And if you cheat, you're a coward in it. You know, dirty fighters who eye poke, you know, purposely, you know, dirty fighters who are on steroids, knowing the other guy isn't on steroids, you know, it's just disgusting. You know what I'm saying? Especially, it's more disgusting if you're a coach and you involve yourself in this. So basically, Louis only got 3 years in prison for this. He only got 3 years in prison. He should have got more. He got 3 years in prison. He was banned from the sport of boxing. Meanwhile, Billy lost his dream, lost his eyesight, lost his income, lost his life. You know, because those punches he took, that brain damage, it can heal up, but that brain damage is there, you know. So it's a real tragic story of Billy, you know, and one of the worst stories in boxing history, Billy Collins Jr. You know, boxing has so much history. Boxing is such a great sport, and it's a manly sport. You know, we knuckle up, see who's the better man. But every once in a while, you get a coward in there. You know, there's been many cowards. You know, there's been stories of people putting plaster in their gloves. You know, there's been stories of people putting things outside their gloves, so when they hit the fighter can't see. You know, that was a Muhammad Ali story. We're gonna get into that one as well. You know, but rest in peace, Billy Collins Jr. Long live Billy Collins Jr. You know, his story made the sport of boxing a little bit safer, because now we know that people can cheat in this way, you know, and long live Billy Collins Jr. 42 years ago, this fight took place, and he should still been alive today. You know, he still had a long life to live, and it was cut short because of a bum-ass trainer and a bum-ass boxer, you know. And that's why when these fighters hop in the ring, they deserve the maximum respect, you know, because we're watching it for our entertainment, but it's a very hard sport, and everything is on the line. You know, long live Billy Collins Jr. Learn to fight.